Hello there, it's midnight. Thanks for joining us on Nightline. Here are the top stories. Government mulls action against parents who take children out shopping during conditional MCO. Post-MCO guidelines for school management finalised. And English Premier League restart gets boost as UK government sets June 1st date. Good morning, I'm Azaria Tagaya. Parents are advised not to bring their children to public places and shopping malls for their own safety and health. National Security Council's Senior Minister for Security Cluster, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, said at the moment there is no prohibition against parents taking their children along when they go out to crowded places. However, the government may look into enforcing a ban if it is deemed needed in order to control the situation.
Setakat ini tidak ada, tetapi jika perkara ini berterusan, kerajaan boleh memasukkan di dalam peraturan di bawah Akta 342 untuk membawa anak-anak ke tempat khalayak ramai seperti supermarket dan sebagainya sebagai perkara yang terlarang di dalam list negatif yang ada pada ketika ini. Jadi kita akan bincang perkara ini. Jika nampaknya masih lagi ibu bapa tidak menghiraukan keselamatan anak, insya-Allah kerajaan boleh membuat undang-undang melarangnya. Tetapi sehingga kini saya masih mengharapkan ibu bapa mengambil tanggungjawab untuk kawalan kendiri ini.
The Defence Minister said he had noted many parents are taking their children to shopping malls and public places during the Conditional Movement Control Order. In advising the public, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri said the safety of children is the responsibility of their parents. He then urged parents to ask themselves whether it is really safe to bring children along to places where a large crowd may be expected. On another matter, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri, who is also the Defence Minister, said the government has consolidated all of its enforcement agencies to monitor illegal routes into the country. He noted that for the first time, the government had created a special task force comprising enforcement agencies headed by the armed forces to monitor all entry points on sea and land.
Jadi semua kawasan-kawasan itu kita telah pun kena pasti sebenarnya. Jadi cuma dari segi kita, kalau dulu mungkin kita secara agensi yang mengawal, tetapi sekarang kita buat secara bersepadu. Aset kita pun kita satukan supaya lebih kawalan kita lebih tersusun, lebih hebat dan sebagainya. Jadi itu yang kita lakukan, yang sedang kita lakukan. Dan sebenarnya saya tidak melaporkan sudah ada tangkapan-tangkapan dibuat. Termasuk tekong-tekong mereka juga telah ramai yang ditangkap selepas kita mengadakan kawalan bersepadu itu.
Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri also said the special task force will ensure foreigners would not be able to slip into the country illegally, pointing out that even Malaysians returning from overseas need to undergo compulsory quarantine. He further stressed that foreigners are still not allowed to enter Malaysia, regardless of the fact of whether or not they have family members living in the country. In another development, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri said the government has prepared some 32.6 million face masks to be distributed to all Malaysians. The senior minister said the face masks will be distributed to a total of 8.16 million households in the country.
Topeng-topeng muka ini telah pun diagihkan sepenuhnya ke Jawatankuasa Pengurusan Bencana Negeri dan Daerah melalui 162 pejabat daerah untuk diedarkan ke setiap isi rumah di kawasan masing-masing. Jadi dari segi pengedarannya, daripada pusat telah pun sampai ke negeri, telah pun sampai ke daerah-daerah, yang mana tanggungjawab pengedaran itu terletak kepada daerah-daerah. Dan
He said the ministry had been informed that in some states, distribution has been 100% completed, while he noted that in comparison, some other states, such as Sabah and Sarawak, might encounter a slight delay in order to complete full distribution. The Education Ministry has finalised Post-Movement Control Order MCO guidelines, which will be announced in the near future. Senior Minister for Education Muhammad Razi Muhammad Jidin said his ministry, together with the Health Ministry and the National Security Council NSC, have completed the set of guidelines to be used once schools reopen.
Daripada sampai sekolah nak kena buat apa? Kemudian masuk kelas buat apa yang perlu dilaksanakan. Laluan ke kelas macam mana? Laluan masuk ke sini, laluan keluar ke sini. Ke kantin siapa yang pergi dahulu? Berapa ramai pelajar akan berada di kantin dan sebagainya. Boleh tak makan di kantin? Nak makan kat mana? Cara makanan di kantin disediakan bagaimana? Itu semua detail-detail yang kita perincikan dan akan dikeluarkan insya-Allah dalam masa terdekat.
He was met after the recording of TV3's talk show Soal Rakyat at Sri Pentas on Monday. On when schools are expected to be reopened, Muhammad Razi said his ministry will follow the instructions set by the Health Ministry and the NSC. Now, the Health Ministry has advised against taking the 20 visitors per home rule for Aidilfitri too literally, as social distancing continues to be paramount in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. Health Director General Datuk Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said the number should only include family members rather than social visitors. Speaking at his daily briefing in Putrajaya, the Health Director General stressed that the size of one's living quarters must first be taken into consideration in order to ensure social distancing rules are followed.
Dan apa yang pasti ialah kita kena ikut SOP Kementerian Kesihatan, iaitu penjarakan sosial. Jadi kalau dalam apartmen 20 orang tu dah kira confined space dan crowded space. Jadi dah melanggar peraturan iaitu SOP Kementerian Kesihatan.
He also stressed that Malaysians must prioritise the health of senior citizens who are more vulnerable to the infection and advised the public to just skip such visits if they may endanger the demographic. On Sunday, Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin said authorities will ease restrictions for travelling within the same state during Hari Raya Aidilfitri, but with a maximum of only 20 people allowed in the same place at the same time. At the same media conference, Datuk Dr. Nur Hisham highlighted that with a number of COVID-19 cases concentrated at wet markets, the Health Ministry is awaiting a report from the Veterinary Services Department on whether the virus is found to be present in livestock. However, he stressed that food is safe to consume as long as it is properly cooked.
Tapi yang pasti ialah tindakan kita apabila kita membeli makanan, kita memasak makanan tersebut. Jadi kalau bila kita masak, virus itu akan mati. Kalaupun ada virus, tapi setakat ini kita tak tahu ada virus ke tidak dalam makanan tersebut. Tetapi kita akan tunggu kajian yang dilaksanakan oleh DVS.
Datuk Dr. Nur Hisham added that the ministry is aware of the fact that the issue is of high concern amongst the general public. He assured, however, that up until now there have been no reported infections caused by consuming food. Meanwhile, Datuk Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah announced that Malaysia reported 70 new COVID-19 cases on Monday. He said out of the new cases, 31 cases were among non-Malaysians.
Terdapat 70 kes baru yang dilaporkan hari ini, terdapat 13 kes import dan 57 kes adalah penularan tempatan. Ini menjadikan jumlah kes positif COVID.
Datuk Dr. Nur Hisham said 88 patients have recovered in the same 24-hour span. There are currently only 1,504 active cases being treated at the country's health facilities. One new death was reported, bringing the tally to 109. The latest fatality was a 63-year-old Malaysian man with a history of cancer and diabetes. The Immigration Department raided the Kuala Lumpur Wholesale market in Selayang on Monday morning, hauling up hundreds of migrants. The surprise raid was believed to have started in the early hours of between 6 and 8 a.m. A majority of the foreigners who had been inspected were then seen being brought out of the market by the department's personnel. At about 11 a.m., several trucks were seen leaving the area, believed to be ferrying the illegal immigrants to a temporary detention depot. Kuala Lumpur Police Chief Datuk Sri Mazlan Lazim said police were present at the location to assist the Immigration Department in the operations. Immigration Director General Datuk Khairul Zaimi Daud, when contacted, said the department would be issuing a statement on the matter. The Malacca State Assembly on Monday reconvened after Perikatan Nasional PN representatives voted in State UMNO Chief Datuk Sri Abdul Rauf Yusof on their own as the new speaker during a vote at which no opposition members were present. This happened after verbal insults and books allegedly being thrown around by PN politicians, which led to the sitting being adjourned by Speaker Datuk Omar Jaafar of Pakatan Harapan. The commotion started at about 10 a.m. when BN Sungai Udang State Assemblyman Datuk Sri Idris Harun wanted to bring out a motion to remove Datuk Omar on the grounds that PH no longer commands the majority. Datuk Sri Abdul Rauf's appointment was then made during the assembly, which was chaired by Datuk Ghazali Muhammad of BN RIM. The Malacca UMNO chief was elected after receiving the support of 16 of the 17 PN State Assemblymen, while all opposition representatives were absent. The proposal was read out by Malacca Chief Minister Datuk Sulaiman Muhammad Ali and supported by Datuk Sri Abdul Ghaffar Atan of BN Asahan and received the support of 15 other state assemblymen. Still to come on Nightline, girl beaten to death for refusing to eat. More on this when we return. Back on Nightline, the Chief Registrar of the Federal Court of Malaysia announced on Monday that cases set for an open court hearing will begin in stages from May 13th. In a statement on Monday, the Chief Registrar's office said it will enforce strict health and safety standard operating procedures (SOPs) and guidelines to curb the spread of COVID-19. The public is required to check their case status and are encouraged to file documents via e-filing. They are also required to download and complete court visitor forms from the Judiciary's official website for social tracing purposes. The forms will also be made available in courts. All courts in the country will be restricted to one entry point at the respective premises. The Office of the Chief Registrar said that it is mandatory for the public to wear a face mask at all times within the court premises, and that the court will not provide face masks. A body temperature check will be conducted and only those with 38 degrees Celsius and below will be allowed to enter. The public is also advised not to attend court if they are unwell, while social distancing will be maintained at all times. Beaten to death for refusing to eat before being dumped near a mall. This was the fate of a 6-year-old girl in Selangor. Ampang Jaya District Police Chief ACP Nur Azmi Yusof said police were alerted to the incident around 9:50 a.m. on Monday after a security guard stumbled upon the body. 3 suspects, a man and 2 women, were picked up soon after the body was found. The trio will be remanded to enable police to conduct probes. The child was believed to have been beaten to death at another location before she was dumped at a restaurant near Ampang Point. A United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees UNHCR card was found on the body. Checks on the body revealed bruises at several areas, including her arms and torso. The police believe the victim was beaten with a blunt object by her stepfather because she refused to eat. The body was sent to Hospital Kuala Lumpur for post-mortem. Police have classified the case as murder. In Terengganu, an excavator driver was killed when he was buried alive in a freak accident in Kampung Pantai Ali, Bukit Payung, Kuala Terengganu on Monday. In the 10:30 a.m. incident, 59-year-old Cik Abdillah Harun was said to be filling up lorries with soil before it collapsed on him. Wakaf Tapai Fire and Rescue Station Chief Khairul Azmi Ismail said he received a distress call at 11:20 a.m. 9 firemen were dispatched to the scene and the body was retrieved at 1:40 p.m. using 2 excavators. The victim's remains were sent to the Hulu Terengganu Hospital for post-mortem. Scores injured in oil tanker explosion. This and more after the breather. On to the foreign front. At least 22 people were injured when a crude oil tanker burst into flames at one of Indonesia's busiest ports on Monday. According to local officials, 2 explosions were heard shortly before the blaze erupted on the 250-metre-long Jaglila, belching huge clouds of thick black smoke into the air. Firefighters on board another boat battled to put out the inferno on the Indonesian-flagged vessel that was docked for repairs on North Sumatra's Belawan port. Emergency personnel brought 22 injured sailors to the hospital, with dozens more still believed to be trapped in the tanker. The blaze also spread to at least one other vessel docked beside the oil tanker, while the force of the explosion caused minor damage to nearby homes. The cause of the explosion and the blaze is still under investigation. Now, a new European study showed that the male blood contains higher levels of a key enzyme used by the coronavirus to infect cells, a finding that may help to explain why men are more vulnerable to COVID-19 as compared to women. According to the study, which was published in the European Heart Journal, the angiotensin-converting enzyme 2, or ACE2, is found in the heart, kidneys and other organs. ACE2 is a receptor on the surface of cells which binds to the coronavirus and allows it to enter and infect cells. This enzyme is found in high levels in the testes, and its presence in the male organ may partially explain higher ACE2 concentrations in men. The study also found that widely prescribed drugs called ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers, ARBs, did not lead to higher ACE2 concentrations and should therefore not increase the COVID-19 risk for people taking them. The COVID-19 pandemic has infected more than 4 million people worldwide and killed almost 277,000 people. Death and infection tolls point to men being more likely to contract the disease and suffer severe or more critical complications compared to women. The central Chinese city of Wuhan reported its first cluster infections on Monday since a movement control order on the city was lifted a month ago, stoking concerns of a wider resurgence of the disease. The city reported 5 new confirmed cases, all of whom lived in the same residential compound. One of them was the wife of an 89-year-old male patient reported a day earlier in the first confirmed case in the city since April 3rd. All the latest confirmed cases were previously classified as asymptomatic, people who test positive for the virus and are capable of infecting others but do not show any clinical signs such as fever or flu. The new infections add a layer of caution in the efforts to lower restrictions across China as businesses restart and individuals go back to work. Wuhan is the original epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak, where the virus first emerged in a wet market that was believed to be selling exotic meat. In Beijing, middle school students returned to class as virus restrictions were eased with extra health and safety measures as China began transitioning back to normal life. Temperature monitoring bracelets that alert an app if a student has a fever were being trialled at Beijing schools, the country's latest use of high-tech to track its population's possible exposure to the coronavirus. The bands provide real-time temperature data that can be monitored by schools and parents via an app. As of Monday, China recorded 17 new cases, bringing the overall tally to 82,918 with no new fatalities. Over in South Korea, health officials disinfected a high school in Seoul on Monday as schools are set to reopen later this week following the government's earlier decision to relax coronavirus restrictions. However, local officials are scrambling to contain a new outbreak that is threatening to spread throughout Seoul, leading the country to reconsider plans to reopen schools. South Korea reported 35 new infections across the country as of midnight on Monday, the second consecutive day of new cases of that magnitude and the highest numbers in more than a month, reinforcing fears that the country could be entering a second wave of the outbreak. After the break, football action from the Belarusian Premier League. Don't go away. Back with sports now, some football news. The English Premier League has been given the go-ahead to resume behind closed doors from June 1st by the government of the United Kingdom. The matter was announced on Monday after British Prime Minister Boris Johnson set out a roadmap to ease restrictions during the movement control order on Sunday evening. A full report has since been released, and in any case, no spectators will be allowed at matches, with the league's 20 clubs set for a vote on how to resume the season in the next few days, including the use of neutral venues to host matches. England's top division has been suspended since March 13th, and there is, as yet, no consensus surrounding how or if the 2019-2020 season will start. There are still 92 Premier League fixtures to be played, with clubs now back in training at training grounds, albeit while observing the government's social distancing guidelines. The report also states that fans in football stadiums may only be fully possible significantly later, depending on the reduction in numbers of infections. Now let's take a look at the highlights in Malaysia's main newspapers for Tuesday, May 12th. The New Straits Times highlights experts' advice to stay home should they not be able to heed the strict Hari Raya Aidilfitri SOPs. Meanwhile, the nation's best-selling Malay newspaper, Harian Metro and Berita Harian, both focus on the arrest of hundreds of migrants in the Kuala Lumpur wholesale market in Selayang. And the Malaysian Reserve heads with changes in GLCs that see return of politicians at top posts. Do get your copies today or subscribe to the e-paper. Now, the tiny hatchlings of olive ridley turtles began emerging from the sand in Odisha, India, and were caught on camera making their journey towards the sea. The name for the sea turtle is tied to the color of its shell, an olive green hue. As we wrap tonight, let's take a look at these hatchlings on their first day on Earth. I'm Azaria Tagaya. Thank you for tuning in, and to all our Muslim viewers, Selamat Bersahur.